Hello everyone, and welcome back to Humble Heart Horsemanship. My name is Sabrina, and today's video is going to be very, very different than what I typically upload on this channel. The first thing I'd like to say is that my horses, myself, and my family are safe. If you're wondering what we're safe from, basically we are safe from multiple wildfires affecting the area in Oregon where we live. So it's a very long story, and we have been through a huge amount of stress over the past 5 or 6 days. And today has really been the day where I feel like I can actually breathe and feel somewhat okay about this whole situation. And I'm currently in a hotel in Forest Grove, and I'm in my sister's hotel room because it's nice and quiet in here, and I figured that it would be a good spot to tell this story the best that I can. Because this whole situation is still unraveling, and we don't really know what's going to exactly happen from here on out. There will definitely be more videos with updates, but I just thought, I'm sitting here, why not make a video detailing what has happened so far? So on Labor Day, this is really when the whole thing happened. So I went to the barn on Labor Day, and I spent like 5 hours with the horses. I taught a lesson with a new client at the barn, working with her 2 Mustangs, and then I decided to turn Gemini and Gunner out to the pasture and let them have a few hours out there. I cleaned Gemini's stall and his run, refilled his water, filled some of his feeding tubs. I actually gave Gemini his first bath, and it was really successful and fun, and braided his tail and put in the new tail bag, and it was a good day at the barn. And then I brought Gunner down from the pasture and rode him for like 20 minutes in the indoor arena, and then put all the horses back where they belonged, and then I drove home. And when I had been at the barn earlier, my new lesson client had told me that she wanted me to help her hold her horses so that she could put her phone number on their hooves, because we knew that towards the end of the night there was supposed to be a huge windstorm that was going to happen in a lot of parts in Oregon. And so, she said, hey, do you want to borrow a Sharpie to write your phone number on the horse's hooves? And I was like, oh, they'll be fine, it's just a windstorm. Little did I know, right? So she wrote her phone number, and I just put the horses back and left and didn't really think much about it. And then I got home, and within a few hours it was really windy outside. Helped our mom get her garden all ready for what we were just expecting to be like a huge windstorm. We didn't want any of our plants to break, so we were going around kind of tying up the plants and securing them and putting them on the porch. And then it was windy all throughout the night, and I was about to go to bed, so I went to the bathroom, and then I came back, and I always check my phone before bed, and I looked down and it said missed phone call at 11:30. And I was like, well, that's weird. And it was Sarah, who is the barn owner / barn manager at my barn where I board Gunner and Gemini. So I was nervous, right, automatically, because usually when you get calls that late in the night, something is wrong with your horse, right? So I ended up calling her back after I sent her a few texts, and she just said that basically there was a wildfire not far from the barn, and that she was calling everyone to make sure that they had some type of evacuation plan, type of horse trailer or truck, and she wanted to assure that everyone, knew what was going on, which I was really appreciative about. So at this point, it's extremely windy outside. The house felt like it was literally shaking, and I was nervous. So I woke up my mom, I woke up my sister, and I said, hey, we might need to evacuate the horses. And I was shaking at this point because I have never had to evacuate horses from an emergency situation like this before. So I was super nervous, but trying to keep it together. And I threw on a pair of jeans and a sweatshirt, got a tumbler cup of water, took a fire extinguisher, and took our truck. And my sister's so amazing, she went out there to help me, right, in this crazy storm. So we decided to take the truck, and we drive down the road, and then we realized that for the first time, probably ever, the truck was almost close to empty. And we're like, oh my God, so we have to go get gas now in this crazy windstorm. So of course, the 2 gas stations we go to are closed. So we turn back around and end up taking my sister's car that had a full tank of gas, pretty much. We drive out to the barn, and just down the street, there's this huge tree that's blocking one of the streets, so we go around it, and I mean, there was a lot going on. There were down power lines, the trees were literally swaying completely sideways, looking like they were gonna just break off and fall. There were branches in the middle of the road, and keep in mind that this storm is still actively happening, right? So it was very crazy. We could feel the car kind of shake, and we're like trying to stay calm, right? So I should say that I also went on Facebook and I noticed that my friend Savannah was offering to haul horses out of any of the areas where people need to haul horses out of in the state. And I messaged her and I said, hey, I don't think I'll need you for tonight, but I might need you later. Is there any possibility that you could come out and help me haul my horses to a safer location from Colton? And she said, oh my gosh, yeah, just give me a call. So I ended up giving her a call, and I'm like, hey, can you meet us there? Here's the address. I think we need to move the horses. It's better safe to be sorry. So we're driving out there to meet her, and after this crazy drive, very eerie, very scary drive out to the barn, we get to the barn driveway, right? And so it's about like probably 3/4 of a mile drive down to the main barn, and there is a security gate that you put in a little code and it opens. And she texts me right as we're about to pull down that drive and says, there's a tree down, I'm trying to move the branches. And we're like, oh my God, are you kidding me? The one access point to get into the barn has a huge tree. So there's this huge tree in front of our trailer, and so Savannah gets out and we get out of our car, and we are physically lifting these huge branches and trying to toss them to the side of the road. And there was this really big branch that we really couldn't move because it was so heavy. So we did this for probably like 5-10 minutes, just moving branches, trying to clear as much as we can. And what ended up happening is Savannah's like, you know what, screw it, I'm gonna get in and drive over it. So she rammed her truck. We thought she was gonna have like the airbags go off or something, right? We're like, oh my God. So she drives over it, and really we didn't have any other option. We have to get the horses. They're all the way down there. There's no other access points into the property. The gate was open, so we drive through, pull up by the main barn, and I hop out, and I told my sister on the way there that she is going to go down to the pasture to get Gunner, because Gunner is out on this probably like 1.5 acre pasture, and there's like a few trees, and it's a really beautiful pasture. I don't know why that matters, but so I told my sister to go get Gunner because I didn't think that he was going to give her any problems, and then I would go into the barn and get Gemini. So I go into the barn and I turn on the lights, like praying we have power, and we did have power, so that was very helpful. And I was like trying to calm my own energy. I'm like, you need to deep breathe through this. You need to like not transfer your nervous, anxious energy to Gemini, because I was just praying to God that they would load so easily in that trailer because we didn't really have any other option. So I go into the barn and I'm like, hey Gemini, and I open the stall door, and he was so great. He let me put on his halter, and he looked a little spooked, but he didn't look super crazed or anything. And the other horses in the barn are like neighing and moving around, and it was just pretty chaotic. And I brought him straight out into the parking lot up to Savannah's trailer, and I go to walk in, and I do what I always do when I go to trailer horses. I take a deep breath in, take a deep breath out, and I have a lot of confidence as I'm leading the horse into the trailer, because I know that they pick up on any type of hesitation, right? So I'm like, okay, we're gonna do this. We're gonna walk in there. And I walk in there really confident, and Gemini followed, like no hesitation, jumped right into the trailer. So I tied him up, and then once he was in, I started talking to Savannah, and we were I don't even remember what we were talking about. But as we're talking, I hear this big, like a big sound. It almost sounded like metal just being pulled from some type of structure. It was very loud. And I look over to my left, and there's a huge panel off the indoor arena roof that had just been pulled off in the wind, like just ripped up and was flying in the wind now. And it was a huge piece of metal. And so now there was this huge hole. So that was scary. And I'm like, what is taking my sister so long? So I start to walk down the path to go see my sister, and I hear her, she's like, we're coming. And she's like, Gunner was really spooky, and whole story of how she tried to go up there and she thought she saw like a coyote or something. There's something with eyes in the corner, and then Gunner was really panicky in the field. He came like galloping down towards her, and she thought he was gonna run her over. So he was really anxious, because the back part of his pasture is just woods, right? So all these trees are falling down. It's very loud. It's very windy. He was really spooked. And so my sister put his halter on and brought him down and Same enough with Gunner. I grabbed his lead rope and I led him right into the trailer. And I just walked straight in there with a bunch of confidence, and he loaded perfectly too. And I was like, thank you, Lord. Like, I really don't think I understood the importance with practicing trailering and having horses that understand how to trailer well without any issues, because that moment could have been very traumatic and very scary. Time was of the essence. I mean, we didn't know if there was going to be another tree that would fall down that would prevent us from leaving. There was a lot going on, and the horses had to load. So I was so grateful, and so I tied him up, closed the door, we get in our truck. Savannah goes off back to her property in like Happy Valley. And so she drove off through Estacada, and I think I ran back to the barn to get a few buckets of hay in his feeding totes, and so I grabbed whatever hay I had left. And then I just left. I didn't grab anything else. We're about to drive off, and I go, oh my God, where's my wallet? So I end up hopping off, and I'm like looking for the wallet. I go up to where the trailer was, and looking on the ground. I didn't find it. I'm like, you know what, screw it, we're leaving. So we drive out safely, drive through Estacada, which is also extremely windy, but there's not a lot of down branches in comparison to the like Colton, Oregon City area. So after, oh gosh, probably like a 45-minute, there's ramen here, her dog. After like 45-minute drive, we get to Savannah's, and I am so grateful to Savannah because she not only was willing to drive out into a crazy, very dangerous storm to help rescue my horses, but the level of care and passion that she had for rescuing horses and rescuing my horses was just so impressive, and I'm so grateful for her. And so she let the boys stay at her place, and we got a little tour of her barn at night and put the boys in her stalls. She kicked her own horses out of their stalls, put them outside so my boys could have the stalls, and she gave them fresh water and bedding, and I gave them some hay, and I felt so relieved. I'm like, oh my God, they're out of the crazy danger zone, right? So I was just so grateful for her taking them in for me and letting them stay at her property. And then we left, and I was just expecting to go back the next day and just get the boys, like bring them back. Hey, you gonna hang out here, Ramen? And so, gosh, my brain is like not here to like pay attention to what I'm saying. I'm sorry. So anyways, I was expecting to see him the next day. The next day, I go to work, and there's still wildfires, but they're far away from our house, and from the barn, pretty far away. So I wasn't really that worried. The barn owner had posted some pictures on Facebook of the damage to the barn, and it was crazy. There's a lot of down trees. Tuesday, I went back to work and had a pretty normal day at work, except for the power was off. And we didn't have any power for like 3 days. So I had my little lantern in the tack room, and we taught lessons. I taught like 10 lessons that day. And then last lesson of the day, the sky was looking pretty smoky. And I had my last lesson, and it was pretty late in the evening, and started driving home. And I could tell it was getting smoky out, and I didn't realize how bad it was because of the location I was at work. It didn't look that bad. And I drove down the street, and there was a downed power line, and there was a bunch of branches, and it was still windy. And I drive around this bend, heading towards like the main highway, and there's a huge, surmountable amount of smoke, very dark smoke, close nearby in the sky. I'm like, oh, this is not good. And then I get closer into the more metropolitan area, and there's a bunch of cars bumper to bumper, and everyone's like driving away from the smoke. I'm like, oh, this is not good. And so I of course start to panic, and I'm like telling myself to breathe, practicing my deep breathing to get through this moment. And then I turn on a street that I always drive down almost every day to go back home, and there was a fire in a building. And there were people on this bridge literally just turning around, diving out into traffic, panicking really to get away from this fire that was coming up on the road. There was a crane in the sky and a bunch of firefighters, and I could see the flames. So I turn around to go back and go on the main highway thinking that will be safe. And it was, and I got home, and when I got to the town where I live in, it wasn't really smoky. I couldn't see any fires, and I felt so relieved. I'm like, okay, I'm in a safe spot. And I was so relieved when I walked home, because I had been white knuckling the whole drive, that when I got home and I finally took my hands off the steering wheel, my hands were actually physically hurting because I had been driving like this the whole way, even though I was trying to tell myself to breathe deeply and not to stress out, right? So my family's kind of preparing like for maybe if we need to evacuate, and then I go online and learn that the entire area where I'm in is at a level 1 evacuation. I'm like, oh, well, this is great. So I did pack the first day because I thought I'd pack the next day, and I did pack. At this point, the fires are getting really, really close to the barn where I board my horses at. And basically there are currently, as of when I filmed this video, 2 huge fires that are 0% contained. There is the Beachy Creek fire and the Riverside fire. And both of them were pretty much closing in on where the barn is located. And even as of today, we don't have any updates on whether or not the barn is still standing. Next thing I should probably say is that on that same Tuesday, I learned that they had to evacuate all 30 plus horses out of the boarding barn because it was getting so smoky and the fire was coming, that whole area only hours later was in a level 3 evacuation zone. So if I hadn't moved the horses when I did, it would have been very impossible and very dangerous to my health and my horse's health if I hadn't moved them when I did. So always follow your gut intuition and your gut feeling, because a part of me when I was driving out there, I was like, oh, this might be overkill, it's a windstorm, there is a fire nearby, but they'll probably contain it. And I was like, okay, I'm like, maybe I'm overdoing it. And my sister's like, yeah, this is kind of funny, like we'll just bring them back tomorrow. And then little do we know, so it's like 5 days later and that whole area is still in level 3 evacuation. The fire is pretty much about 4 minutes from the barn. So I don't know if the horses are going to have a barn to return to. And I've already cried about it. I've already have felt so many feelings of gratefulness to have moved them and to know that they're in a safe place. It was just a lot. It's a lot to process, and I'm still processing it. But that's why you're not seeing me cry right now, because I've cried so many times about this, and I just have to have faith in God that He always has a plan and His guidance is there, and you just have to seek Him during these times, because we don't have any control over what happens. He does. And so if we're thinking that we're the ones that get to decide what happens and when it happens, it's a false sense of hope, because clearly these fires have really shown me is that we don't have that control. So that's why you have to really live your life minute by minute, having gratitude for what you have and being present in the moment, because you don't know when your life could change dramatically. So it's been so crazy, but really we ended up having to evacuate out of our home because that area was first on level green, which is level 1. Okay, there's 3 levels. So we ended up the next day packing our stuff, and I had packed a small bag, and it was the weirdest thing because when I was in my bedroom thinking about the things I wanted to bring, there were a few things that were really important for me to bring and others that I didn't really care about, which made me question, it's really weird to go into your room and to think, I'm going to take a bag of things that I want to keep and save from a fire. It's so weird when you hear, people say, what were 3 things you would save if there was a fire? And, I never, ever thought that would be a reality of something that I would actually be deciding in my life. So it was just all very surreal and stressful, and I packed, a few changes of clothing, a few of my favorite clothing items. I packed my graduation ring and my great-grandma's ring that I had inherited, and just a few other small stuff like my phone charger. But it felt so weird just to think if my house were to burn down, all this stuff would burn down in it, and it was a lot. It was a lot to process. So we ended up leaving with our cargo trailers in our truck, and we left when it was evacuation level 1 green, just because we could see by the next morning when we woke up that it was getting very, very smoky and very, very dark in the sky, and we didn't want to wait around until it went on level 2 when people start to evacuate, because we were afraid it would be difficult to get out of town. So we booked a hotel in Forest Grove, and that's where I'm at right now. I'm still here. So this is my sister's hotel room that I'm staying in. Our room is just like around the corner. So just like so many mixed feelings. And when we were driving out of town to see the smoke near an area that I had grown up and a barn where I had so many memories and was essentially my horse's home, to be covered in smoke and to not know if it's going to be there is a lot. It's really a lot to process. So and then another thing that was even crazier about it was when I got here, day before yesterday, I was looking at the map of where the fire was and the evacuation zones, and basically my friend Savannah's place was on just like literally on the outside of the green border. So they were super close to being in level 1. They weren't quite on it. So I felt incredibly blessed that that was a place that I had decided to keep my horses. And a few of my friends had to like move their horses multiple times. So they would move them like to Malala or somewhere else, not knowing that the fire was going to get close to there and that they would have to evacuate. And they would think, for a few hours, like, okay, this is a good place, my horses are safe. And then they'd get notice that they have to move their horses. And it was just, for them, almost like, it was really just like trauma after trauma of having to move their horses somewhere safe and then the fire catching up to them. So I feel really blessed that I didn't have to do that, but there were times when the fire got really close and I was, trying to figure out as quickly as I could different options for how to haul them, because I don't own a horse trailer. And now that I've gone through this experience, I've always understood that it's important to own a horse trailer, but I never really understood how important until I have been in this situation myself. You can only do so much. I don't have a horse trailer and I need one. I'm going to get one. But yeah, there was times where I could sleep at night and I was trying to figure out how I was going to move them if they would have to evacuate from the barn that they were at. I feel so grateful to know that they are where they're supposed to be. And that they're okay. So basically, my friend Savannah went out rescuing horses, and I think she has like 26 horses now at her property that she's caring for. A lot of them are neglected. There's a lot of people that have no other place for their horses, and like for me, I had to leave my horses there and just hope that they would be like taken care of well, which is really hard for me. Because, when you're used to seeing your horses every day and caring for them and being with them, it's something you get used to. And, I haven't seen them as of today in a week. And that is hard for me. I've got some updates from friends. I actually had a few people who volunteer and ride and work at the barn where I teach full-time actually go out there as volunteers and help Savannah with taking care of all these horses that she took on. And a lot of people sent me pictures or said oh my gosh, I met your horse, which is crazy because we're friends on Facebook and we see each other at work, but I've never met your horses. And just how it's just been so incredible how this is such a huge full circle of how these connections that I made and these people who are just so incredible and have such a heart for the horses and the animals and rescuing horses, and how all of that in different worlds, my personal horse life and my work life and my family life, and how all this combined in this crazy, amazing, purposeful situation of how things ended up. So currently at this hotel in Forest Grove, smoke is really bad. The smoke is definitely worse near where the horses are at, and I can't change that. I can't move them, and we just have to have faith that everything's going to work out okay. I know that they're being fed. I know that they're loved. I know that they have water, which is what is important, and I have the same for myself. And our house yesterday went from a level 2 evacuation for about 2 days to a level 1. But the air quality is so hazardous that they're telling people to not even step outside for 1 second near the Portland area. Just it's been a lot to process. And I feel like I had post-traumatic stress disorder for everything that happened. So I feel incredibly grateful to have my family and our dogs. And I have Ramo here, sweet boy. and this really beautiful hotel and a bed to sleep in and food. So it's been a lot, folks, but I know this video is not like what I typically upload, so the only thing that I ask is for you to pray, if you pray, or to send positive thoughts to my horses, myself, and my family for us getting through this crazy, crazy difficult time. And I really sincerely hope that if you have been affected by this fire in any way, whether you had to evacuate or you lost your home or your animals or a loved one, I just want you to know that I'm praying for you and that you're in my thoughts, and that, you know, this too shall pass. It is so, like, it's such an incredibly difficult situation to go through, and a lot of us have never gone through a situation like this before and never would have imagined that we'd be in this type of situation. So we just have to take one day at a time and know that soon the rain will come, right? We're in Oregon, we're known for rain, so I think we're expecting rain tomorrow, and I'm hoping that that will help them to, you know, have a little bit more containment on these fires, because there's still 0% containment. If you are safe and your animals are safe, our families are safe, you know, your home's safe, whatever is safe, take that with you and just find gratitude in it, because so many other people are in a worse situation than what I'm in, maybe than what you're in, and we just have to be strong for each other and show each other love during this really difficult time. So thank you so much for watching this video. I hope that you guys are getting through this time if you're affected by the fire, and I will see you in the next video. Bye, you guys.